is shining, the birds are chirping, the bacon is sizzling. Welcome to the Daily Swole.
Brother, totally cool. So let's just get right into it. Let's just tell the fam a little bit about yourself, and we'll just jump right into the show. And yeah, go ahead, take it away, Luke.
Right, so I'm 21 from England. I'm at university studying sport and exercise science. I want to become a teacher at the end of my degree, hopefully. And basically, my end goal from being part of Swolenormous is just to obviously lose body fat and then eventually, hopefully, become a bodybuilder.
Nice, man. Sweet. So how long have you been working out? Is this obviously isn't your first foray into fitness? What's your experience so far? Because bodybuilding, that's my bag. And now I've never competed on stage, but that's like what I have been doing from the beginning. That was like my straight up approach from when I first started bulking, was all about bodybuilding, balancing out the body aesthetically, strength, but always having the right proportions. What's your experience with training so far?
Right, so I first started when I was 16, as a lot of boys do when they finish school or going into like college and that. And then ever since then, it's been about on and off. But the past 2 years, I've really been hitting it hard. I've gained a lot of mass, but the fat is going slowly, not as fast as I want it to. But then again, things take time.
Always takes longer than you expect. I mean, I just got off another phone call earlier, and we're just talking about patience. We're just talking about literally the mentality of going into it with the long-term approach is a game changer in itself. And if you can harness that, I mean, you're really investing your time when you're going after bodybuilding. That's literally saying, okay, I'm doing a long-term investment in my body, and the building part is the process. So like, are you looking to lose, like, where are you at with the composition wise? Because bodybuilding obviously is about the proportion of the muscles. It's about the how much you can see the muscles in terms of the aesthetics and the ratios. Where are you at in terms of like where you're starting with your height, your weight, and so forth, like body fat percentage, if you have that kind of idea so far?
Right, so at the moment, 181 centimeters, so about 6 foot.
Okay.
Give or take. Weight is now, it was 125 kilograms, so give or take about 250 pounds. I'm now down about 10 or so pounds, and trying to think, my body fat percentage was, when I first started, about 27%, and now I think it's gone down maybe 1 or 2%. The aim is to get down to, at the moment, 15, and then progress from there on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Always. So you're training right now. What are you doing? What are you doing for your fitness? Are you doing more of would you say more of a free rate routine, or do you have any kind of programming? Do you have any kind of schedule that you have been doing in terms of your actual physical training?
So at the moment, just finished your primer week. Going into the actual first week of the workouts. It was very interesting. I found it difficult because I'm not very flexible.
Right.
And, the more you gain mass, the less you stretch, the harder it is to be mobile.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just trying to get used to that. And it's definitely showing a lot more like what I can and what I can't do. But with the stretching and the mobility, I find it a lot easier to lift a bit more heavier weight. But then again, technique is also a lot better as well.
Yeah, that's super interesting when I talk to people like yourself that are looking for strength, and I come after with mobility and yoga, and like, really? Mobility and yoga? But it balances it out. That's the kind of stuff that I wish I had when I started, because when I started training, I didn't do a lot of mobility. I didn't do yoga. Luckily, I was always coming from the approach of training each body part proportionately. So I had that balance, but then I started, getting little muscle tweaks and kind of, I started breaking down. And that's when I got into really like massage, foam rolling, yoga, but it changes strength completely. If you're balancing out the muscles and you're opening up your posture, game changer, man. Game changer.
Oh yeah, I completely agree, 100%. But since I started foam rolling, which has been possibly the past 3 to 4 months, I've seen a massive difference in the muscle recovery compared to when I was just leaving it. So when I train legs to complete failure,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be sore for like, 4, maybe 5 days. But since I started foam rolling, it's only 2 to maybe 3 days.
Nice. Nice. Is there anything that are you foam rolling the entire body or just focusing more on your legs? You're doing upper body too?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, for say chest, I will use a cricket ball or something
Mhm.
that's hard like that, just for more trigger points, so I can like get deep into the muscle and really massage it.
Yeah, sure. And for anyone watching or listening, foam rolling or SMR, self myofascial release, that's what you see in the gym. You see, the black rollers or the white rollers, and there's different ones with different intensities and different densities. So there's two ways to progress foam rolling. Either you use a harder surface or you use a smaller surface. So it's a smaller surface area, like a tennis ball or a cricket ball, like Luke was saying. So for something like the chest, and this goes for women too. I get a lot of questions about this, like how do women roll their chest out when we got breasts and stuff? You can use a tennis ball or a soft ball or even one of those practice balls. They have soft balls, the bigger ones, but they're for practice for indoors and they're rubber. So you can actually roll the muscle and get in like up by the armpit. So it's not really so much like you're rolling by the nipple area. You're rolling up by the armpit where the actual chest muscle is. So yeah, you're doing the right thing, man. Using a cricket ball or a tennis ball or anything like that for the back, even for between the shoulder blades or the rotator cuff is really exceptional. What'd you notice in terms of since you did the primer week in terms of like total body awareness, in terms of maybe the prone cobra or the prone press, if you've done any of those moves, what's one of those specific little exercises, activation exercise that you noticed particularly that really woke up like a sleeping muscle, that woke up an underactive muscle?
So the prone press, I actually did it yesterday. Um, you really need to throw your ego out of the window, and you really need to use a lightweight. Because I tried starting with a 10 kilo dumbbell, which I
Mhm.
think is about 20 pounds or so. And then it was just too heavy. I couldn't do it. So I dropped down to 6, and I still found it quite hard, but it was a lot easier. But trying to stabilize it was difficult at first.
Yeah, you can do. I usually use 5 pounds. I actually have been going up towards doing like 10 pounds, but I make the incline really high. So if I'm trying to do a prone press, and every once in a while I'll go on like a super high incline because I have to be almost like 80 degrees in order to do the 10 pounds with accuracy, just to
Yeah.
shake things up. But usually, anyone that's watching or listening that's familiar with the prone press exercise, you definitely want to start light. I even do this with my arms. You could do this totally with your hands or use like a wooden dowel, bro. If you ever use just like a wooden or like a one of those thin, maybe 1 inch PVC pipes and literally just push it with the bar. I mean, you don't need any weight. Your arms are the weight. The arms are the weight. And Eric is asking on Facebook for the prone press, which is more ideal, adding weight or dropping the angle? And the answer to that would be if you're instead of increasing the weight, I would drop the angle. So make it more challenging before you increase the weight. And that goes for pretty much every exercise. If you're increasing the difficulty before you increase the weight, you're less likely to injure yourself and overload. But if you're going to increase the weight, you got to increase the angle. But I would recommend going with a lower angle first rather than increasing the weight. It's just going to challenge the muscles more. It's not the prone press, as you know, Luke, is not about the weight. It's humbling though,
No.
man. It's humbling as hell.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree, and especially with some of the other exercises like um, stiff leg deadlift, but
Hmm.
single leg. Uh, because single leg, sorry, stiff leg deadlift.
Hmm.
Usually you can use heavier. So I thought, oh, it won't be too hard. So I tried using like 40-pound dumbbells for a single, and it was just unbelievable. I just couldn't do it. So I had to drop down to like half or even less than the weight that I was actually using.
Yeah, those exercises, the balance and the stability is just the way your body is moving is the primary. That's really, if you're focusing on how your body is moving and what muscles, if you go lighter, you can focus on the individual muscles a lot more. When you start going super heavy, you start really getting into those type 2 fibers, that explosive movement, and then you get the larger muscles taken over. And that's really where a lot of people fall back or fall off or miss the point when it comes to prone press, because like you were saying at the beginning, it's very humbling. You have to drop the weight. And if you're a dude in the gym, you go to the gym, you want to lift some weight. So when you're going and you're grabbing 5 pounds, most people are, they feel weak. They feel like a wimp. But if you do it properly, you're actually going to hit the right muscles. Then you're going to lift more when you're doing rows or you're doing bench. That's going to help you for all those exercises. So it's so great for thoracic mobility, which is great for front squats. It's great for back squats. It's great for anything that, interacts and engages with like a total body exercises with the core. So yeah, if you leave your ego at the door, especially for bodybuilding, it'll keep you much more humble and modest about the way your body looks, what you have to work. And if you ignore what the weights say and go more by what you feel from the weights, you're going to get more results. Did you see or hear the episode where I was talking about closing your eyes at all?
No.
Yeah, I did something. I did a piece recently about a little strategy I use where in the gym, I'll close my eyes when I'm doing a set, not during like a dangerous set, like a squat or a deadlift, but maybe like an incline press where I'll close my eyes and do the set, because when you close your eyes, you cut off one of your major senses. And then by doing the exercise, you just really feel, if you close your eyes, if you're blind, for example, the ears become more sensitive. You start hearing things better. You become more acute, your sense of sound. And the same thing goes with your sense of feel and touch. So if you close your eyes during some of those sets, you can really squeeze the muscles a lot more rather than be visually distracted. Just a cool little tweak that I was discussing the other day.
Okay, yeah, no, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
I'll definitely try that next time. Actually, I'll try that tomorrow, to be fair.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you probably do it anyway when you're grunting or like straining at the end of a set. But if you actually use that as a tool, it's just pretty cool. It's a nice little psychological play. So sometimes when you're doing lighter weights or you're just trying to squeeze out the last couple, just shut down the eyes and really focus on the move itself. Where do you think your ideal, like, what are you trying to do currently? You might have mentioned this before. Are you trying to gain right now? Are you trying to bulk up, or are you trying to really just trim down extra body fat? What's like the number one priority? Because bodybuilding that's a journey. So what's your primary goal now in terms of
at the moment, cutting the fat, but trying to maintain the muscle mass or build lean muscle mass. So what I've done is sort of followed like your guidelines with a nutrition plan and that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've lowered my carbs, increased the fat a little bit, but good fat, so like coconut oil, cooking with things like that instead of vegetable oils, and then obviously higher in the protein intake, but drinking a lot more water as well. And it has actually over the past week obviously shown a difference.
Yeah, do you know how much water you're drinking, or are you just ballparking it? Or
I'd probably say I'm drinking about 3 liters of water a day.
Okay. And that could even probably go up. You can probably do 3, 4, even up to 5, depending on the weather, depending on how hard you're training. Just because I'm on video, so I have this like 32 ounce, about a liter, and I try to drink a few of them, at least like 4 or 5 a day, depending. But I'm also in Florida, so the humidity is ridiculous. So I'm sweating all the time. So obviously, the more water you lose, the more you consume. And I've been kind of on this little water kick when I'm doing content, just because everyone focuses on the nutrition, which I do for training, which I do for my food. But at the same time, water is the most important thing. And that's usually where people fall short without realizing it, that if you're not drinking enough water, that's more important than food. It's more important than food.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not doing the water right, that comes before even getting your food right. So everyone that's listening, if you're not calculating or you're not aware of how much water you're drinking, it's time to turn it up a notch. If you don't know, you're probably not drinking enough if you're not aware of how much you're drinking. Usually anyone that drinks enough is like, shoot, I drink water all damn day. So yeah, man. What's like, would you say is a sticking point for you? Like what is there something you're struggling with in particular? I know you said you had a few questions. You were talking about pull-ups, but you said you figured that one out and you have that kind of organized. What's the next thing that you're aiming for?
Right. So I struggle with the form on a deadlift. So it's all meant to be one smooth movement, but my legs and my bum sort of kick out, and then my back goes up. So it's more like a stiff leg deadlift instead of a proper deadlift.
Okay, I'm gonna try to see if I can pull up that movement on the. Let's see if I got a deadlift tutorial. I'm gonna see if I can bring that up on video. How much? Like, what are you doing when are you doing your deadlifts? Are you doing them on leg day, on back day, or on a separate day?
So it's weird. So I'll do like a normal back day, but then I'll do a heavy back day. So where I'll try and switch it up and do heavy first, and then work my way down to light. But then by the time I've got down to the light weights, I can't even do half the reps I should be able to because I've just pushed myself so far doing the heavy that I
Hmm.
can't do the light.
Are you so? Give me a little more background on your entire split. What's your training split looking like for the week? I know you started doing the primer week and everything, but what was like your general split before starting?
Right. So on a Monday, I wouldn't like to train chest because for some reason everyone likes to do chest on a Monday.
Oh, International Chest Day, man! In the UK or here,
Yeah,
it's
literally.
everyone does it. Yep.
So I do legs on a Monday,
Hmm.
and then after that I do on a Tuesday chest, and then triceps. A Wednesday would be back and buys. Uh, Thursday would be weaker muscle day, so hamstring, traps, uh, forearms, calves, because calves I find are very hard to grow
Yeah.
for some reason.
Hmm.
And then the Friday would convert back to legs. So I try and do at least twice a week every um, section, but I'd try and leave a couple of days in between at least.
Okay. So that's kind of like a general split there. Would you say the deadlift is that your weakest? Is that your weakest body, like your weakest exercise? Is that you find your grip strength giving out first, or is it something that because you said your back was rounding at the top and you have problems like lifting off the floor?
Yeah, it's mainly grip strength.
Okay. So that's usually when it comes to grip strength, usually, and I think we discussed this yesterday, that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So if the grip is going, your body is going to try to compensate. Anytime a muscle kind of gives out, the body is going to squirm, twist, and try to, bring the weight up. That's the goal of the body to survive the exercise, right? And if the grip is going, it's something that you can strengthen a couple ways. Have you ever done farmer's walks or just dead hangs on a bar, like a pull-up bar?
Yeah, I was doing it quite a bit when I was adding more cardio into it, but then I think it was actually one of your YouTube videos I watched, and you said cardio is not necessary, so I just kind of stopped that.
Yeah, it's maybe not so much that it's not necessary, but it's just the focus of doing cardio to exhaust yourself or to lose weight is not my personal preference for either guiding people or for myself. I'd prefer to go after it from a nutritional standpoint or to increase my intensity of my strength training. I feel like a lot of people get really wrapped up in just running on that rat race, like just, spinning their wheels on a treadmill rather than, fully developing their nutrition or drinking enough water or training hard enough. I feel that gets lost in the mix and just gets put in like a back burner in terms of what's important rather and just people just like freaking hit that cardio because it's easy. It's easy. It's literally not a lot of work because what you're doing is just hopping on a machine or going for a run. It's very simple, and more isn't always better. Have you ever burnt out? Have you ever felt that kind of just overly exhausted and not felt like going to the gym, or too sore for too long? I know your foam rolling has improved your recovery time for legs, for example. But yeah, have you ever felt that psychological burnout?
Only once or twice, but
Okay.
that's because I was being silly and training like twice a day and not eating enough.
Okay.
So I stopped doing that, and yeah, I feel a lot better.
Yeah, there's so many different layers to overtraining or to listening to your body. And the more you listen, the more you pay attention to what your body wants, the better it'll be, because your body might be giving you signals psychologically, physically. It could be recovery time might be extended. You might be feeling weaker in the gym. You might be exhausted in the morning, elevated heart rate. There's a lot of different aspects to overtraining, which I'm sure you're learning and you're getting with your degree and everything, and just from personal experience. But in terms of bringing it back to the deadlift for grip strength, farmers walks, dead hangs for anyone listening as well. A dead hang is just literally hanging from the bar, letting your scapula upwardly rotate, and just hanging from a pull-up bar helps with the shoulders, and it helps with grip strength, of course. And also just literally doing the farmer's walk, which is similar to a wheelbarrow where you'll hold two dumbbells that are very heavy and you literally walk around the gym. So grip strength needs to be trained, but also balancing that out, because if you do a lot of grip strength, you can definitely overwork those forearm flexors and get medial epicondylitis, get elbow tendonitis. Have you ever had anything like that? Any issues with injury or tendonitis?
Not so much, no, but because of where I was beforehand training a lot,
Yeah.
I injured my some ligaments in my wrist, and they told me to take a month off. So I've literally just come back from that month and just trying to get back into it now.
Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do right now, and I know you're not watching, I'm going to bring this, let's see here. I'm going to bring this exercise, the deadlift, onto the screen. Dun, dun, dun. And then break it down. But then what's really cool is like you're going to be able to refer to this video, and then everyone else that's watching will get a little bit extra on here. Let's see. Good. So this is actually a workshop that I did. And let me just, you see my little head in the corner. Okay, cool. So I'll bring that down here. So in terms of, and I'm just going to walk through the form, and obviously, Lou, you can refer to this, later on. The importance with the deadlift is to keep your hips back, driving your big toes. Your feet are flat. I never liked when people cue going back and rocking onto your heels, because if you're on your heels, then you're losing surface area, you're losing pressure, you're losing the ability to drive over the proper center of gravity. A lot of people will rock back on the heels because they lack flexibility in their hips and their ankles. Now, when you're doing the deadlift, for example, the bar is close to the body. Oh, do you do a standard deadlift, or are you doing like a conventional, or are you doing like a wide sumo?
Oh no, this is just normal standard.
No more. Okay. So the ankle mobility, hip mobility is very important. Keeping your chin tucked in and down, and keeping the bar against your shins and close to the body. As I'm going to roll this forward, let's see, because I'm talking, this is just an instructional video. So as you pull up, there's that transition phase when you get past the shins and the knees. Now, where did you say you found your problem in your form? Where did you feel
So
it?
it's as I'm coming up, as you start to straighten the knees, my hips sort of kick out backwards. So instead of my chest being upwards and coming up with everything else, it's more like my hips are kicking out first, and then it's like I am sort of raising like a lever sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to see exactly your form. And I mentioned this yesterday because I was having this conversation with deadlifts yesterday. If you're able to, because you're in the private group, you can record your deadlift, which would be awesome, and then load it up and post it up in the group. And then I'm more than happy to take a look at it and discuss that, because deadlifts are such an important exercise. It's one of the best exercises for total body, but just for glute activation. One of the things that you can do to increase or improve your form is to focus on the glute activation. And that's a huge part of the deadlift. And a lot of people think of it as a back exercise or a leg exercise. It's really a glute exercise, in my opinion. It's a total body. But if the glutes are not firing primarily, if the glutes aren't in charge, then you're going to get that lower back action. So as you're pulling up, that's why people wear those socks and they actually scrape their knees. You've probably seen people actually like scrape their legs or shins and, bleed from a deadlift, if you scrape it too hard. But it's really a hip hinge exercise. A lot of people will go really wide for the sumo stance because you get a lot more leg clearance because of the wide stance, but that also takes a lot more hip mobility, and there's more than enough people that do that improperly. So in this video that I'm showing, my head is down, my back is flat, and as I pull up, what I always think of myself doing is when I lift with my shoulders and my back first. I squeeze my glutes, but I activate my shoulders and my back first. And the reason why I do that, Luke, is once you get past the knees or once you get up towards the shins, what tends to happen if you focus on the glutes and squatting first is once you're in that transitional phase, a lot of times the weight can shift instantly to the lower back. Like if your legs straighten out too far, and this might be your specific issue, and a lot of people out there straighten out their legs too fast because the legs are stronger than the back. The legs are stronger than the upper body. So you'll drive up and you'll do kind of like that leg straightening like you mentioned, and then all of a sudden, right when the legs get too straight, if it's not synchronized properly, all of a sudden all that weight gets transferred from the hips to the lower back, and then boom, all of a sudden you have like 200 pounds go from your legs right to your lower back, and then bam, people have like that pinch and ooh, I threw out my back, or I hurt a herniated disc or something. So what's really important is to think up and back already with the shoulders, and that's going to help keep the bar close to your body, and it's going to avoid that sudden force just getting thrown onto your lower back because you're already thinking thoracic spine, you're thinking pulling the shoulders back, you're thinking pull with your lower back at the same time as you're squeezing your glutes and driving with the legs. So you're not thinking legs first and then all of a sudden it gets transferred to the lower back. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, no,
Okay.
I completely agree. And when you said about glute activation, what I started doing about 2 months ago was glute exercises before I do deadlifts, and it did help improve quite a bit. But it's just the problem with, for some reason, the chest not being able to lift up first. It's like my legs just want to completely take over. But it's getting a lot better than what it was.
Yeah, and it takes time. And what's really there's that you're experiencing this yourself, that transition between mobility, form, and strength, and you're activating these muscles. Remember, like a lot of this is new in terms of the stabilization, in terms of the yoga. Once you wake up these muscles, don't forget you're just waking them up. They're not necessarily at peak condition, and it takes time. So once you activate the glutes more and you create that kind of synergy with your upper and lower body and with your core musculature, then it's about retraining all those individual muscles to work together. So once you activate the glutes and you activate these individual muscles, then it's all about integrating those muscles and putting them together as one whole package. So it takes some more time and some more patience in terms of, and maybe dropping the weight, just like the prone press, like dropping the ego a little bit, and making sure that you're integrating these muscles properly. But you'll feel the difference if you're doing the glute activation, doing the floor cobras, the prone press. That's going to help you keep your lower back or your back more flat, because if you're activating your middle and lower trapezius, and you're pretty much flattening out and aligning your upper spine, it's going to take pressure off your lower back and your lower lumbar, and it'll help your glutes activate more because your body is not compensating and leaning more towards dealing with improper posture above the spine, above the lower back. And that's really what it's all about, is just creating that proper foundation in your glutes and in the base of your spine, so that when you do these heavier exercises, everything is essentially firing. Because if you don't have those tiny muscles in your spine activating, your multifidus, longissimus, all these deep muscles, you're in for a big surprise, and not a good one.
Oh yeah, no, I do completely agree, and it's hard when starting out, but instead of like the weight as well, definitely form is 100% the thing you should focus on first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So have you ever done rack pulls or elevated,
Yeah, I first time I did rack pulls. I was training with a couple friends, and we was doing it in not so much sets, but in time frames.
Okay.
So you'd go 30 seconds, 40, 50, and then a minute. But you start off with like as heavy as you can do, and then you go down each one at a time, and it's in so sort like a drop set pretty much. But there's more time to do as many as possible.
Um, so I just to clarify, do you mean you were doing a rack like you were running the rack, or were you pulling from an elevated deadlift? You're pulling from a higher position. That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
higher position.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Yeah. So that's the drop sets, and you can, like any exercise, you can tweak and play with the deadlift. But what's great with the mobility is if you start activating these muscles and then focus on rack pulls first, you're obviously going to have better form from a higher position, because it's always that deep position, that starting position, that is going to cause risk for people, because when you're at the bottom, you're in the most, I would say, posturally compromised position, because you need that ankle mobility, you need that hip mobility, you need that thoracic mobility. And if you don't have it, your exercise from the beginning is going to be flawed. You might be fine with doing 135, but then once you start going up with the kilos, your back's going to start rounding, because that foundational strength and mobility wasn't there to begin with. So if you are feeling it, or you notice that you're having bad form, you need to avoid that like the plague. You need to either do rack pulls and work on your mobility, and or both, because you don't want that catching up to you. You don't want that sneaking up all of a sudden when you're straining, because once you start going towards maximum weight and you start really pushing yourself, you're not thinking about form, you're thinking about moving that damn weight. And if things aren't working properly, that can be an issue. Another good tweak. Have you seen because you're in the private community? Have you seen the lateral tube walking that I've done for the glute activation on YouTube or on the site?
No, not yet. I'm still trying to work my way through all the videos.
Yeah, that's fine. So, but you've seen those elastic bands that people put around their ankles or their knees and stuff?
Yeah, I have done that a couple times, and I do find it helps.
Yeah. For the deadlift, you tried it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I did it for a couple minutes beforehand, and then I stretched out, and then I tried deadlift. I did find it easier, to be fair.
Right. Have you done it during the deadlift? Have you had it around your legs during the deadlift?
No.
Okay, so that's what I want you to try next. If you put it above your knees, like just above your knees, not on the actual joint, but maybe like a couple inches above the kneecap, and you have one of those bands, while you're in your stance, it's going to encourage your body. It's going to fire the gluteus medius during the movement. So it's going to help you open up your back a little bit. It's going to help your back flatten out. It's going to help remind your body that during the deadlift, these muscles should be activated. So you can do that, a lateral tube walk. You can do that to activate the muscles beforehand. But I would also, raise that, you do the warm up around your ankles, but then when you do the deadlift, to raise it up and put it just above your knees. So it's forcing the femur out to the side, and just to resist the band during the movement, and it will activate your gluteus medius during the actual deadlift. And that makes a big difference too. I do it oftentimes when I'm doing Romanian deadlifts in addition to full deadlifts. And it's cool because you're not going to rub the band with the bar, because by the time you pull it up, you're really not going to. I mean, it might roll up if you roll up your thighs a lot, but it's just a rubber band, so it's not like you're really going to destroy it too much. But it's a really good way to increase your activation during the movement, just to like improve your form and to integrate those muscles with the movement for your body.
Okay, yeah, no, that sounds like something I should definitely give a go. So, yeah, next back day, I'll try that.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been playing this little and this tutorial, this deadlift tutorials in the masterclass section on Swolenormous X, but I was just been kind of playing it on loop just so people can see if they don't know what a deadlift is or what I'm talking about. But I think we kind of covered that. Do you have any more questions, or do you have anything you want to add to the deadlift game?
No, I'm quite happy with that, to be fair.
Yeah, and I don't know if you have one, or if you have one accessible. Have you ever tried one of those hex bars, like the ones that are like a circle that you stand inside for the deadlift?
Yes, I have tried that a
Yeah,
few times, and it is easier just because the handlebars are at the side of you instead of in front.
sure, sure. And it's also I mean, what also makes it easier too is the fact that it's on the side and you can sit back on your heels more. So for people that have issues with their lower back, it's a great way to change the center of gravity. So instead of the bar being in front, which is very taxing on the lower back, which is also a good thing as long as you have the glutes activating, it's what strengthens the lumbar area. But also, if you do a hex bar, it takes pressure off. You're able to stay more upright, and it puts more on the glutes and more on and less on the lower back. So anyone listening, or even for yourself, Luke, it's a great. I wouldn't even call it a modification. It might not be the classic way deadlifts have been done, but that's because the hex bar wasn't around at the beginning. It was just a straight bar. But the hex bar can definitely allow people to keep more of an upright posture, similar to a front squat, where if you put the bar on the front, it's harder on the thoracic area for mobility, but you'll put less pressure on your lower back because the weights in the front allows you to stay more upright to balance out the body. So that's also a good option and helps take pressure off the lower back.
Yeah. Would you suggest using the bands as well for that type of deadlift?
Around your knees.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could. You certainly could. That's so the bands are great for literally what's awesome about those bands is first off they're cheap. It's just like cheap rubber. So I love always suggesting equipment that costs next to nothing and is super effective. So the reason why the glute medius is usually underworked is because we don't do a lot of lateral movement. We walk front to back. We're sitting down a lot nowadays. So our glutes essentially shut down, but that's what's responsible for stabilizing our core and our spine and our legs too. So the glute maximus on the back gets deactivated and kind of neurally shut down, but then also the lateral stability. So when you have the band around your thighs, around your lower thighs, it's going to encourage the body to fire those muscles to resist the band gently. You're not really crushing. It's not going to be the strongest band possible, but it's going to give you that mental coordination where your body is saying, okay, we need to push out to the side because otherwise our knees are going to pull in. So it helps you keep your form the way it should be, but also while there's tension on it. So you're activating the glutes and the gluteus medius on the sides while you're doing the deadlift. And that's even going to be better because you won't have to worry about the bar rubbing up against your thighs and maybe rolling up the band. So I would, no matter what deadlift you choose, even if you do squats, man, even if you do squats, it's a great placement for the bands. I do them a lot during even just doing my warm-up sets on squats. Sometimes the entire workout for squats, I'll put the band around my thighs. And what's great about that is even for heavy sets, I'll do it. And sometimes because I'm sitting down a lot, I'm at the computer, obviously here we're doing the podcast and everything, I tend to sometimes get a little lateral knee pain, get a little runner's knee on the side of one of my knees now and again. I stretch regularly, but it's happened throughout my life. I just have to keep on working on hip mobility and foam rolling and so forth. But if I ever have any kind of tension or any kind of, dryness or issues with that, I put the band around and I can squat fine. And it just has to happen. It has to do with the TFL, one of the musculatures up in the hip, a hip flexor muscle that actually attaches onto the fascial connective tissue on the side of the thigh that causes this type of internal rotation with the femur that causes that rubbing on the outside of the knee. So when you're activating the gluteus medius, it pulls the thighs apart. You get more femoral abduction, and that will kind of inhibit that muscle and that kind of inflammation and issue from occurring. So you're triggering the right muscle to take the job rather than allow the body to compensate. And that's usually what the principle of correcting posture is to retrain the body to say, no, this muscle shouldn't be working during this move. This muscle should work. Your body is going to resist and say, no, we like using this muscle. And you say, no, this muscle should be working. This muscle shouldn't. And using the band is a very easy way to remind the body nonstop during the movement to keep those muscles activated. So yeah, long answer to your question, but for sure.
It takes the pressure away from anything getting damaged, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it helps. It helps remind your body, and it helps keep the right muscle firing and teaching your body to fire that muscle. So it's like anything else. You train your dog to sit, to lay down, to roll over. It's any kind of training. You learn how to ride a bicycle, whatever it is. You have to teach your body that during the deadlift, these muscles should be working. And if you don't have that band around your thighs, then your legs are just there. And you might be driving your feet into the ground and squeezing your glutes, but you don't have any tension on the sides of your thighs that's causing those muscles to activate. So it's just a little bit of an extra, pixie dust on the exercise, a little bit like a topping that helps remind your body to fire those muscles and give it a little bit of an activation. And you don't need much. You just need to have that little gentle tension, because then they'll fire during the whole exercise. And it makes a massive difference. And it's interesting because it sounds like, oh, I'm doing more work. It's going to fatigue me more. It'll make you stronger, man, because it gives you more support around the glutes and more activation. And you'll feel a big difference. 100%. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, no, that sounds great, to be honest, because literally any tips that anyone can give, I will take it all on board. So, because I used to, I bent over row, my back used to be arched a bit. And then I got some tips from a PT saying that, look, if you straighten your back, so like when you pinch your scapula together and poke your chest out, you'll feel a lot better. And it did. My posture improved. I could lift more weight and I could feel the activation a lot more.
How do you do your barbell rows? Do you do an overhand, a pronated grip, or you do a supinated underhand grip for your barbell rows?
I do a bit of both. So I'll alternate. So I'll do like one set pronated.
Okay.
And then the next set I'll do supinated. But on the supinated ones, I try and squeeze more because it's underarm. I find it a bit not easier as such, but you can pull it back a bit more and sort of tuck your elbows in slightly more, I find, and then you can squeeze a bit harder.
Yeah, I prefer an underhand grip for my barbell rows. And a really good hack is, because you can do a very upright. You can have a very, very upright position for a barbell row as long as you keep the bar against your thighs. So it takes pressure off the lower back, but you can be very, very upright as long as you literally drag the bar up on your thighs and drive it right into your hip bone. Once it starts coming up towards your stomach, you lose that connection with the shoulder blades, the middle and lower traps. You lose that full contraction. So as you bend forward, the more horizontal, the more parallel with the ground your back is, you need to pull more and more towards your stomach or towards your chest, and that puts more pressure on your lower back. So depending on mobility and the weight, I usually like to stay a little bit more at a higher angle. That's usually my preference. But I prefer an underhand because I think it takes a little bit more of the it takes more of the forearm out of it. It takes more of the the brachialis and the brachioradialis muscles in the biceps. I can really isolate the lats more when I do an underhand grip. Plus, the lats will stretch more when you have an underhand grip, just because of the external rotation of the humerus. You get a little bit more stretch in terms of that action of the lats. So, I mean, just as long as you're focusing on driving against your hips and into your hip bone, that's going to be a big hack for you. Let me see if I can pull that up as well. So, yeah, did you ask a question on the rows? I know I just kind of jumped in there on that one.
To be honest, no, not really, because you asked. You answered really what I just wanted to know about deadlift, and then obviously the pull up. I watched yesterday, so I didn't need to ask you about that. No, really, they were only the only questions that I needed.
Yeah, the barbell rows. Let me see if I can bring this. I'm trying to get a good angle. See if I can bring that up. Let's talk a little bit about nutrition then. We'll leave the exercise. If anything comes up, we just go back to it. But let's talk a little bit about your food intake, because obviously we're talking bodybuilding, and that's the direction that we're going with this. That's going to be, nutrition is absolutely huge. So in terms of what you're consuming, let's get into that a little bit. What changes have you made? Are you doing anything with, for example, the elimination diet? What have you done? What were you doing before? What have you done or tweaked since coming across my content? Let's see if we can maybe hack that a little bit, because that's going to be very important with your progress.
Right. So obviously, a lot of people struggle with nutrition. I find it quite hard because all like sort of my life been eating junk food, all that crap. But about say October last year, give or take, it really started to change, and that's when I started to notice quite a lot of dramatic fat loss. And it's been the past about 4 months I've been cutting properly, and
Nice.
I've really cut out everything crap. But I didn't actually realize that some foods that people think are good for you aren't actually as good as what they are made out to be.
For sure, man. So what have you noticed from cutting out from your nutrition? What have you noticed like that you cut out that made you feel better, right? That made you feel, because I mean, there's always that one or two foods that all of a sudden you'll eliminate. Wow, I used to have headaches and they went away. I used to feel exhausted or drained, or I'll bonk out and crash in the afternoon. Like, has there been anything that you added or tweaked that made that kind of an impact on your nutrition, on your life?
Yeah. So in the mornings, instead of eating cereal with milk or anything like that, I will now have eggs. So you need to fuel your body.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just find that you need to fuel your body in the mornings, get it ready for the day, and then just before you work out, have some carbs so you can lift that little bit heavier. You can go that little bit extra further and
Mhm.
things like that.
Are you still doing? Do you consume any dairy? Do you consume grains? What are you doing for specifically your carbohydrates?
Right. So the past 2 weeks, I've cut out dairy, and I've actually noticed quite a big difference. So my stomach has shrunk. I don't feel like I'm having withdrawals because it's sort of like the first week or two, you find it quite hard. So I don't like drink milk anymore. Don't have like normal butter or margarine or anything like that anymore.
Okay.
So carbs, I won't eat bread. I'll eat rice or like brown pasta, things like that,
Okay.
or sweet potatoes.
Sweet potatoes are the that I always push those so hard. That's the king, man. Sweet potatoes are the king. That's that makes so much of a difference in my training and how I feel and how I look. I feel that food. I can't explain it. I talk about it all the time, but I can't explain why. I just literally feel the difference. It's so mind blowing how anything else that I consume, it doesn't impact me the same way. But that's my go to carbohydrate for sure. I live on sweet potatoes. I love them. I love them. It just gives me that real full feeling in my stomach, but not just in my muscles as well. It really helps me saturate. And most people that shift from rice or pasta to more sweet potatoes, yams, those types of things, notice a huge difference. Notice a huge difference in either bloating or just energy levels, because those other types of grains can be inflammatory. Now, I know in the UK, you're going to have access to different things. You're not going to get as poisoned, I should say, as we do in the United States. Like, you got to be a lot, from what I've heard, there's a lot of times different processing and different. I've never been, so I don't know. Maybe you can speak on that. I'm not sure if you have any kind of issues. Have you ever tested that? Have you ever tried going without rice or pasta and things like that, and seen how that affects your body?
Yeah. So I don't eat pasta as much as I did. And I found that, especially white pasta, not so much brown, more white,
Mm,
that there's not as much bloating.
okay. Yeah. Whenever I used to eat rice, I never ate brown rice. I always ate white rice, but I never felt any real benefit from white rice. I just felt and I don't know. It's hard to explain. I never felt that I got anything out of it. When I eat a sweet potato, I feel better. I feel more energy. I feel more pumped. I feel more, believe it or not, I feel more shredded. I just feel more, just stronger. Whenever I ate rice, I never got that same benefit. It was almost kind of like, I ate rice. It tasted good at the moment, but then like, kind of, I guess. But all of a sudden, sweet potatoes just, and then it gradually just started leaving those other things out. And now that's just been my main, along with vegetables and things of that sort. But yeah, sweet potatoes are my go-to. What about protein? What are you consuming for protein?
Right. So what I've been trying to do, like following your plan, trying to cut out different things. So instead of using one thing, I've gone to turkey mainly, just because it's leaner meat.
Hmm.
I find anyway.
Yeah, leaner. Have you ever looked into grass-fed beef and things that you've heard me talk about? Are you a beef person, or are you just more going after leaner protein sources? I'm a big fat fan. I eat a ton of fat. That's my
Oh yeah,
personal preference.
100%.
Yeah.
I do love that. To be fair, I haven't actually bought any yet,
Okay.
but because I bought my food for the week, so I do it weekly instead of daily. So the next time I go food shopping, I was looking to buy grass-fed meat.
Yeah, that's I love it. I love a high fat diet. I do eat my carbs, so definitely nowhere near any kind of ketosis. Just from strength training, you need your carbohydrates. If you're doing bodybuilding, if you're doing strength training, you need your carbohydrates. But fat is really great for the joints. It's really great for your hormone profile. It's really great for just overall health. And a lot of people will make the argument one way or the other, too much meat, this, that, and the other. A lot of what I like to bring up in terms of, and I'm interested to hear what maybe the mentality is over in the UK. I know with social media and the internet, a lot of this fitness stuff kind of gets blended because all the companies and international people are all traveling all over the place now, and everyone sees what everyone's posting. So it makes the world a lot smaller, which is a good thing, but also can bring bad habits from one place to another pretty easily. But in terms of what goes on with red meat and what people are, attack it for, I often question because all these studies they're not done with grass-fed beef. They're not done with people that exercise regularly. They're not done with people that are looking after their mental health and meditating and doing yoga and approaching it with that kind of overall encompassing. And I usually relate that to, you're not going to have sick people or healthy people signing up for these studies. These people don't need help. These people aren't going to the doctor. You're not getting the research from healthy people that are doing these things the right way. And I don't think there's any one answer, but I do think that there is a huge misconception that all meat is created equal, that red meat, everyone just says red meat. And there's a massive difference between grain-fed beef and grass-fed beef. It's literally a poisoned animal versus an animal that ate the food they're supposed to eat, just like a human. You eat the wrong food, soda, and this and the other, you're going to have diabetes and metabolic syndrome and heart disease. It's just like a cow. Any creature that eats the wrong foods is going to have issues. And if you're eating sick animals, you're going to be one sick animal.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. But because people just think, oh, red meat's too fatty, this and that, stay away from it. But sometimes I don't realise the health benefits from it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're eating,
It's
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just saying it's a hard one. It's hard to please some people.
It's hard to please some people, and it's impossible to please everyone. I don't think what are your thoughts on this? I mean, I know we're talking about you and the bodybuilding approach. What are your thoughts on veganism? What are your thoughts on being a vegetarian? What do you have? Is there a lot of that over in the UK? Is that a big thing?
Well, yes and no. It's like everywhere. To be fair, one of my best friends is actually a vegan, so he doesn't eat any dairy, nothing like that.
Mm.
He gets all of his protein from like nuts and just different things like that. Anything that he can substitute meat for, he will, but he won't touch corn or anything like that because it's just processed crap.
Yeah, yeah. What's interesting about vegetable, a lot of those things can be inflammatory food. I know a lot of people do like the hemp proteins or soy proteins, and most people are aware of the GMO and the modifications for soy and how that's really overblown. I don't have an issue with anyone and that's a personal choice, of course, but you're missing so many vital nutrients. And as much as you can supplement and as much as you can, get enough protein from that, I don't see it. I don't see it from a logic standpoint. And since you're familiar, obviously, with my content, I like to approach life and fitness from a logical standpoint. I don't think it's that complicated. I think this industry is built on complicating something simple in order to sell things to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And we don't need to solve fitness. We just need to move more, exercise more, and eat real food. And then boom, we're healthy humans and we can do what we enjoy until the day we die. I don't think there is this big mystery around it. But when it comes to vegans, I don't have a problem with it if it's your moral issue and you have a problem eating animals. That's an individual perspective, but I think that's just that's a very iffy road. I think it's very natural to eat creatures. I think that's why we have evolved. That's why our brain's the size it is. That's why we're as tall as we are. That's why we are here today, is because we survived on fatty foods. That's how we've survived for millions of years, up until maybe the 40s or 50s, when we were pushing vegetable oil in the United States and everything completely switched to processed foods and these health scares with fat. But in terms of how we're supposed to eat, I have never, ever in my life craved vegetables. I mean, just to think about eating that only. I've never seen a human being look at a grass field and just get hungry.
Yeah, it is very
it's a weird thing. But then you look at an animal and you're like, oh man, it looked delicious. Or we're kind of separated in our society. I don't look at a cow either and be like, well, I'm hungry, because I didn't grow up doing the dirty work myself. You go to a store and you see the meat separately, and I know we are separated from it, but if I grew up 300 years ago, I would have been hunting. I would have been doing this myself. Like, you just get used to it. And people just get scared, I think. I always come back to this whole Disney theory that because of all these cartoon movies and cartoons and talking animals and things like that, since we're kids, people really personify animals, and we think of each animal as like a person. And I don't know, there's this whole hierarchy of survival and survival of the fittest and natural selection that we're just forgetting about. I don't think the industry is perfect by any means, but I don't think it's a bad thing to consume quality meats. I think it's just a process that we're just getting very, very, very over the top and very, very politically correct, and everyone's so righteous. But it bothers me when people start pushing their beliefs and onto other people. Like myself, we're not bad people because we choose to consume meat. I don't hate. I shouldn't be hated because I choose to consume animal protein. I'm not eating it to be a bad person. I'm eating it to survive. I just don't see the correlation between illness and red meat when it's done from quality sources, when it's combined with proper exercise and mental health. There's all these tests are done with lower quality foods. They're done with sick people. They're done with people that are not taking a healthy approach, all encompassing with their life. And I'm assuming it's the same over there in the UK in terms of the mentality behind it. There's probably those people that are militant vegans that are hardcore, that picket and all that stuff, and there are probably people that just, completely opposite.
Yeah, literally. I mean, like I said, one of my friends is a vegan, and he knows people that won't even look at meat or anything like that. They're proper against it, or try and convert you to, being a meat eater, to not being a meat eater. Where he's like, oh, you want to eat meat? Okay, good for you. I just don't enjoy it anymore. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on? And this is one aspect of all of that bothers me. What are your thoughts on? And I'm sure they probably sell them in the stores there. The fake burgers or the fake hot dogs or the fake cheese. It's the vegan cheese or that's made out of soy, or the hot dog that's made out of soy and tofu. What are your thoughts on that stuff?
The cheese, to be honest, is absolutely disgusting. Tried it once, just see what it was like.
I've never tried it.
Yeah, never ever do it again.
If you're not going to eat meat, don't eat things that look like meat. That's the weirdest psychological brain fuck in the entire world, that you're going to avoid eating any kind of animal source, but you're fine with eating something that looks like a burger, that looks like a hot dog, that looks like cheese. You're just lying to yourself, in my opinion. It's made out of black beans and rice. Okay, well, why do you make it into a patty? Why don't you just eat black beans and rice? And then, and then you're having a burger, so you're probably having it on bread, but it's gluten-free bread, or, I'm vegan, so I'm having, and then you're having this like high inflammatory beans and rice and grains meal. And that's a big reason why a lot of people that consume only or non-animal products can be unhealthy and overweight. Is your friend in good shape? Does he take a lot of supplements? Are you aware of all those details? Or is he kind of like, does he look a little bit more emaciated and kind of sickly? Because I see a lot of people that have poor skin quality, that look pale. How is he do with all that?
Yeah, no, to be fair, he is in quite good shape. Goes to the gym, does gymnastics, that sort of thing. So he's quite active. And yeah, no, as far as I know, yeah, everything's fine. He's, face looks fine, that sort of thing.
Oh, good. I mean, that's a good thing. I know a few people that just they go that lifestyle, they go that route, and they just don't look good. They don't look good. They don't have energy. They look. They say they're happy, and I don't know. It feels like it's pulling in two different directions.
Yeah, exactly. It just looks horrible.
I don't know. I don't think it's natural. I don't think we're naturally designed to go that way. And there's a reason why you might have a craving. I did vegetarian for about 6 months years ago, and it fixed my acid reflux. I went with like a very alkaline diet, but I was eating a lot of crappy, low quality chicken. I didn't know it at the time. I was bulking. This is, a long time ago. And once I went vegetarian and I went really a lot of sprouts, a lot of salads, and just complete alkaline diet, it went away completely. But when I came back, I was just craving meat after 6 months, like in my bones and my DNA, I was just craving meat. And I came back with grass-fed beef and things like that. And I've gone through a period where I eat grass-fed beef every day, no acid reflux, no issues. And I was on vacation last week, and I had some chicken wings at a restaurant. My friend, I was like, what the hell? I'll have some chicken wings and a beer. My acid reflux was off the charts, man. I felt bad for a couple days, and every once in a while you need that reminder of why you're eating healthy. Even though I knew it wasn't going to be a good decision, I was like, what the hell? And of course, it always happens, and I kind of expected it. So it just reinforces how your body is an individual unit, and you have to learn how your body, best reacts to that. So, are you counting calories at all?
Not so much, no. So I wanted to work out how many calories I need just to get through the day, roughly.
Okay. Have you been measuring? I mean, you said you haven't been counting, but have you been watching your weight? Because when you're counting calories, depending on whether you're trying to gain or lose, you definitely need to get granular and get detailed for at least a week or so. So then you can kind of gauge how you're gaining or losing based on what you're already consuming. So that would be like the first thing, because you're looking to. Have you ever counted before, like ever?
Yeah. So what I'm doing now is weekly. I'm weighing myself. But I also weigh out my food. I don't necessarily count the calories. I just weigh the food.
Okay. I mean, you can, and that's a good way to translate it over into maybe like an app or something that will help calculate the calories for you. So after doing that, you'll have a better idea of, whether to increase how much you're consuming or decrease. And in terms of the macros, I'm not so concerned with over measuring macronutrients, whether how much carbs am I eating, how much fat, as long as you're skewing your consumption, because if you're doing bodybuilding and you're lifting heavy, you're going to need more carbs than someone who's trying to do like a lot of weight loss. So as long as you're getting your quality carbohydrates and enough fat, the protein can be more of like a moderate. Definitely don't want to do a high protein. Most people don't need anywhere near the level of protein that's promoted. I think that's another red flag in the industry, is the overconsumption of protein. I really do believe that has a lot to do with the industry and the supplement industry just making so much money off whey protein. How much the profit margin is so high with protein powder. And especially when it comes to the hemp and the soy, you're getting government subsidies from growing soy here in like the United States and in Brazil and all these areas. And just to grind it up and add some flavoring to it and then sell it for $40-$50 because of vegan protein, it's amazing. And there's a lot of they do a lot of tests on it recently, and they found that most of these major brands have metals in it from the processing, that these proteins are not pure, they're not very, very clean. And I did an episode on this, I think a couple months ago, and kind of scared a bunch of people. But are you taking any kind of supplements like that?
No. So what I found is that you don't, because I did look into it, and obviously watching your YouTube channel as well. So I looked at journal articles mostly from like university doctors that have looked into this. You don't need to take supplements. It's a hoax. I find quite a lot of it.
I agree with that. I do think that there are some good studies out there. There are some things with certain, of course, creatine is one of the most studied supplements ever. That's in red meat, of course. And then you have other ones like citrulline malate, beta alanine. You talked about those a couple yesterday on the show. But a lot of times these studies are done with very specific populations. And what a major issue is, these studies get taken by someone that writes an article in a newspaper, or they write an article in a newspaper, write an article or a blog online, or they post it on Men's Fitness or some site or on Facebook or Instagram. So you're getting someone's opinion based on a study. And this study could be with, let's say, 10 cyclists that are, competitive cyclists, and they gave them 6 or 8 grams of citrulline malate or one supplement. But when you get the actual supplement or the powder, whatever it is, you're only getting a fraction of that. You're getting milligrams, 500 milligrams or 1 gram. So although there might be some positive research for some of these supplements or some of these things, it's for a specific population, for some people who are already trained. And that's a huge difference. That's a huge difference whether you're a sedentary person or you're an elite athlete. Your body will react to things differently, and your body will show those effects differently. And especially when you're getting a supplement that might be showing some promise and it's underdosed, severely underdosed, that's a huge problem. You're not getting even, and most people don't know how to read a scientific study. Those are not easy. Have you been doing that in class and stuff? Have you gone through that stuff already?
Yeah, so I'm going into my last year now, so I have to look at quite a lot of journal articles, and you learn how to read them efficiently.
Yeah.
But when I first started, I was like, oh my God, what have I got myself into?
It's another language. It's another language,
Yeah,
and you start. And I'm sure have you done your statistics classes already?
Yeah, I've done that last year.
God,
Still fun.
Yeah, those are like the standard deviations and all that, but if you don't take stats, then you're not going to understand any of these studies, because it's all statistics. So you do all these studies and you see the standard deviation, the p-value, and all this crap. And the issue with this is the studies are very specific. And the title really explains that. And the reason why they have to be so specific is if it's not specific, you can't control it, or it's going to be too expensive to do. If you do a huge, massive study, it's going to cost, especially for nutrition, the studies that really need to happen in order to really determine what type of foods are best for the human body would cost probably $500 million to $1 billion to really do it strictly and do it properly on a bigger enough scale, because you can't test 10 people and do these different diets and say, oh, let's see who works. That's 10 people. That's not the entire world. And there's so many different factors. That's why the elimination diet, that's why it comes back to that approach. If you're approaching your own personal nutrition from a scientific perspective by eliminating things, because then you're literally treating yourself as a scientific experiment. And I think that's the best way to do it. You test this food, you take it out, and then you test it when you bring it back in. And you do that with different foods, and you figure out what works best for you. So Luke will find out what's best for him. I find out what's best for me. Anyone watching or listening, you find out what's best for you. And then you make better decisions. And if you learn what foods are best for you, you don't have to worry about a pre-made diet or what am I going to eat when I go to this restaurant? I'm on vacation. What should I eat? You don't have to bring your Tupperwares per se. You don't have to necessarily stick to a set in stone diet, which is very hard to do. And that's why a lot of people fall off. You already understand how your body works and what foods are best for you. I just think treating your body like a scientific experiment in terms of having a control and seeing and observing and listening to your body is not only the best way, it's the only way.
Oh yeah, definitely. I completely agree with that. But like you said, everyone's different. Not one thing that would work for me probably wouldn't work for someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. And that especially when it starts coming towards the nutrition. Exercise is a little bit more universal, but again, everyone's different. People have different muscle lengths and different maybe limitations with joint movement. So everyone's going to be different with that. An overhead press might be okay for one person, and it might be completely inappropriate for another person or cause inflammation in the shoulder. But the same thing with veganism. Some people crush it and love it, and they're lifelong vegan. They've never eaten meat, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. If it works for you and you're happy with it, like, who am I to tell you that if you're in shape and you feel good, who am I to tell you, well, that's not good for you? Obviously, it works for you. We need to have more of an acceptance for individuality, but also the pursuit of what's best. And there's a lot of pointing fingers, and I think it's also a matter of people want to have the right answer. People don't want, but there's a lot of teams and there's a lot of sides, just like politics. You're either on the vegan team, or you're on the meat team, or you're on the paleo team, or the keto team. I don't think it's that simple. I think if you put a name on your diet, you're putting yourself in a box. I think you have to individualize your nutrition more.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So in terms of you're going to count calories, or you're going to, I guess, observe that a little bit more. Are you planning on making any other adjustments in terms of removing a specific food? Is there anything on your list next that you're going to maybe eliminate and test? Or are you kind of like happy with where you are right now with what you're consuming?
Right. So what I've done is I'm doing it a little bit at a time, trying to see what works and what doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, I've found that it is working. So obviously, eliminating bread, I found that works. And then dairy was the next step. That's hard though, because dairy is in quite a lot of things that you eat daily.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that helped a hell of a lot as well.
Mm.
And there's like normal red meat, so non-grass-fed meat. Because I've never really looked like on the packaging for grass-fed, but now that I actually know about it, I will look out for it and just see if that shows any more of a difference.
If you look on the package, see if they have different types. It's always better to get 100 at least in the United States. And I'm just saying that because I know sometimes the laws are different on what you can put and what you can't put. But here, some of these products will say grass-fed beef, but it just says grass-fed beef. And there's a huge difference between grass-fed beef and 100% grass-fed beef. And a lot of what happens on these farms is the animals are fed grass until maybe like the last 20% of their life. They're sent to the slaughterhouse and they're fed hay and grain, and that really destroys their omega-3 profile, the CLA in the meat, and really a lot of the quality of the animal and the meat to begin with. So in the United States, it'll say either 100% grass-fed beef, or it'll say 100% grass-fed and grass-finished. So which means that they might have taken some more grass and had it dried out, but they're feeding grass until the very end, which increases and improves the quality of the meat rather than destroying the profile towards the end.
Yeah, so definitely packages is the thing to look out for. Soy-based things as well. So what about soy sauce? Does that make a difference to things?
I never use it. It's very high in sodium. Salt's not a bad thing, but I don't consume soy sauce at all. Flavoring for me is I'll use Celtic sea salt. I'll use pepper and garlic and just natural seasonings. For me personally, I'm very, very bland with my consumption, and I've kind of retrained my body that way. So when you eat really simple foods and flavorful foods, and that's why I really truly believe that fat is such an important part of the diet, is because of the flavor. And when, hundreds of years ago, even now, when hunters would kill an animal, they would feed the leaner meats to the dogs. The dogs would eat the lean meat because there's less flavor. There's less of a full feeling. You get less satisfaction and less satiety from consuming lean meat than you do with a fattier meat, and you get less energy. So fattier meats, and that's why those fattier steaks are more expensive, because they're more flavorful. But the human body naturally goes towards flavor for a reason. We go towards flavor because it, on an evolutionary level, it brings us towards foods that are good for us. So a ripe piece of fruit in the summer, it's going to taste really good for a reason. The body wants and can benefit from that type of in-season fruit. Your body goes towards and has that positive response to fattier meats because it tastes good for a reason, because it's going to be beneficial to you. So in terms of seasoning, when you eat more flavorful foods and more like a higher fat diet, you get a lot of that flavor. And I have found that I don't need any of those extra toppings in that sense. Sometimes I'll put a little bit of like some really like a quality, ketchup or something, but not too often. Sometimes I do that on burgers, but actually for my grass-fed beef, I'll bake it in with like, salt and pepper and garlic. And I saute some kale, and I actually make, and that's one of those recipes in X, the kale beef burgers. And I love that because you get the kale in there. It's very juicy, and I get my veggies while I'm having my burger. But in terms of toppings, I don't do a lot. I just don't do a lot of seasonings, man. Soy sauce or any other kind of sauce, I really don't get into that too much, actually.
Yeah, okay, no, that's fine. Because what I've started to do is use more herbs,
Hmm.
and it makes you feel cleaner. Like, because when you eat something crappy, like you were saying earlier, and then you get like stomach pains and cramps, and then it just makes you realise that realistically you probably shouldn't have done that, because you've been eating so well, and then you divert back to eating crap for like literally one day. It just makes you feel so out of place.
And if you're listening to your body will tell you those things. You just have to listen.
Yeah, 100%.
And we go through our lives sometimes with our head down. Okay, if this is sold in the supermarket, this must be good. Well, that's not how it works. Just because it's sold in a supermarket doesn't make it a good thing for you. And most people just go through and assume because it's being sold or it's in a box or it's on a shelf, it's something that should be consumed. And that's certainly not the case. So if you're more aware of, what the ingredients are or the lack of ingredients, which is really how you should be eating, you should be eating food with ingredients and listening to how your body reacts. And that's where it comes back to the elimination diet. If you're eating the right foods and you're listening and you're testing, your body will tell you. You ate dairy and you're on the toilet all day with diarrhea, that's not good for you. If you ate dairy and you had migraines for the next 2 days and you went off of it and you had dairy another week and you had migraines again, that's a sign that dairy is not good for you. And that's something that everyone has to be more aware of, that you're in control. And the one place that you get nutrients is through your mouth. That's the one place. That's the one place. And if anything's making it through that face, that gate in your mouth, if anything's making it through, that's your fault. Just don't put it in your mouth.
Oh yeah, literally.
It's so simple. So yeah, man, is there anything else on your mind? I'm just going to open the floor before we maybe wrap up with like your, final statement or anything that you might recommend someone, because you got a lot of people watching the show and listening that are kind of on the fence in terms of just getting started, period. What would you say? I mean, aside from anything else you want to add or discuss, what would you say to someone that is maybe in your shoes or someone that is hesitating to get started? Because we talked about a lot of topics today, and you're doing this, you're studying this, and you're in the middle of it. So it doesn't seem as overwhelming for you, likewise as it doesn't for me, because we're used to this lifestyle. But what about someone who's maybe on the outside looking in, thinking like, oh my God, they're talking about grass-fed beef and this and eating that and cutting this out and going to the gym in deadlift form. Like, holy crap, this episode was cool, but that's a lot. I can't do that. It's too much for me. Like, that's a big challenge for people, is getting overwhelmed because they hear so many complicated things that they just don't understand. Like, what would you recommend for someone that is in that position? Because you started at one point too. So what's that mental shift or that approach that you would recommend?
So what I've done, I mean, obviously being at university, you learn quite a lot of things, but it's all down to research. All the research that you do helps. So just going back to some exercises, watch videos of perfect form, but watch someone who's quite well known. So, big bodybuilders or someone who's a aesthetic athlete who competes, sort of thing, they all have the correct form, and they'll tell you not to use high weight for something that is hard to correct the form or something like that. Food wise, I'd definitely say make sure you do your research or speak to a professional nutritionist who's someone who can help you properly.
It's all there, really. It's all here, really. I mean, we have the Daily Swole podcast. We discuss this, and a lot of what I like to do here is just to bring attention to certain issues. I mean, there's answers and there's direction, but a lot of this stuff is, hey, this is a great thing to do. This is a great approach. Now it's time for you to put in the work. So it opens the door for a lot of it gives people a lot of leeway to not take that action, because there's a lot of you have to be a self-starter. You have to want to do it. And you can't force someone to eat healthy. You can't force someone to be a vegan. You can't force someone to eat more. Like, you have to lead them towards the information and relate it in a certain manner that people can understand. And that's another reason why I love doing these types of discussions, because your perspective is different than my perspective, and your personal experience is going to be very similar to other people's experiences, getting started or their mental approach. But you have a cell phone, you have a computer, we have the internet. You can access all these things, just to put the time into it. Are you looking to take in terms of studying this in university, are you looking to become, like, what are you looking to do for your profession in terms of not just your personal exercise, but are you looking to do more training or exercise physiology? What's your direction with this?
If I can, I want to finish my degree and then do another year of a teaching degree. So that way, hopefully, I can then pass on my knowledge, what I've learned, to a younger generation, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, man. You're doing it right now. You're doing it right now. This podcast is going down in history all time, and it's set in stone what you just said. So now you have to do it. No, I'm kidding. It's so simple, man. It's so simple, and you can always. Right now, you're already doing it. You just did it. So everyone that's listening has benefited tremendously, and it's just that type of ever learning approach, and education and self-education is easier now than it ever has been before. But if you're always looking to improve and do so incrementally, whether it's, okay, you can think about it in terms of fitness, you're making a little bit of progress to gain 1 pound of muscle or to lose 1 pound of fat, and to make those little things. But knowledge, you accumulate that every day. Once you learn something, that's yours. No one can take it away. You have that knowledge, you have that awareness. So just flipping the switch and making people aware of what they're eating, the mindset behind eating better foods that make you feel better, and helping people, is just opening people's mind to those possibilities. And then once their minds are open, all bets are off. Once you open someone's mind and they're exposed to it, you're not going to be unexposed. You're not going to forget it. It's always, and then sometimes that seed grows and they become more hungry for more knowledge. And, have you ever talked to someone about this, about fitness in general or any kind of health related topic, and they were just completely shut down? Like, they were listening, but they were hearing you, but not listening. They just completely rejected, or, oh, it's not for me, or, oh, that's too hard, or I don't have time. Have you had a lot of like negativity or more positivity and like just general, colloquial discussions?
So I find a lot of time when you're in the gym and you're doing exercises, sometimes you'll get people come up to you and ask, how are you looking that good, this and that. And you just need to say to them that it's hard work, dedication. And if you have a problem with something, ask someone. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to help you.
If you ask for help, do you find, like, in terms of when you're, I don't know, that's one of the things where I know a lot of personal trainers, a lot of people have issue, because I see bad form all the time in the gym. I see bad form all the time. And you can imagine, I know you do too. You'll look and you're like, oh my God, what the heck are they doing? But a lot of people, what I learned when I started doing personal training, years and years ago, that there's a lot of pushback. There's a lot of ego and lack of humility when it comes to going up to someone in the gym and making a suggestion, because I'll see someone doing something like, dude, not only are you not doing or getting any benefit from this, you're going to blow your freaking knees out. You're going to hurt yourself. And I try to, I really don't sugarcoat things, but I try to help people. But there's a lot of, I'll help them and they'll say, oh, okay, cool, thanks. And I go to the other side of the gym and I look across and I see them doing the same damn thing. I'm like, fuck that guy. People have to want to help themselves, but there's a lot of negativity. And I've heard a lot of stories where trainers just stop going up and helping people just because they get a lot of pushback. Like, have you ever felt that?
Oh yeah, 100%. But I just find that sometimes you really just need to bite the bullet, grow some balls, and if you're not sure of something, ask. Because a while ago I was having trouble with things, I just like certain things I just couldn't do, and I asked, personal trainers. I was watching YouTube videos, everything, just so I could get the correct form, and it turned out it was only a little thing. Like how you hold the bar or like the angle you hold something at. It's just little things. And if you can tweak that, like you said, you can do so much more for yourself.
Yeah. It's being open to it. And if you're afraid, never be afraid to ask questions. That's how you learn. But you have to be, I think that's also the difference between how your mind works, because you're in university, you're doing education, and you're open to learning things and you're open to that whole environment. And a lot of people aren't. A lot of people don't know how much they don't know what they don't know, right? You know what you know, you might know what you don't know, but then you don't know what you don't know. And that's the scary part, because that's the biggest piece of the pie, is not being aware. And that lack of awareness really sets the success, I guess, parameters really, on opposite ends of the spectrum. So if you're hungry for knowledge and you look and you expose yourself and you're open to it, that it makes all the difference. So Luke, in closing, I just want to ask and just follow up for the Swolenormous community, and I appreciate your time, and everyone does. What would be your closing statement? Like your final, doesn't have to be one sentence, but what would you recommend for people maybe that are in the same situation as you, or what you see commonly in the fitness industry or in your circle? What would be the best piece of advice that you would give someone that's either looking to start or looking to take their fitness to next level or go a little bit deeper with it?
Don't get sucked into these industries that are trying to sell you products. A lot of them are just a load of shit. They try to make money off things that people will buy because they think, oh, big names like that are taking it. But don't listen to that, because it's not the same for everyone. Listen to, what your body tells you in terms of food and in terms of exercise. Like if you've done too much, leave it there for the day, things like that. Some days will be different, they'll deviate. But make sure that you ask people who know what they're doing, or watch tutorial videos on how to do certain things.
Yeah, absolutely. Just be hungry to improve, and always be looking to improve. And yeah, lift the veil. Don't just take everyone's word for it. And a lot of those things are just like they're taking steroids, they're taking all sorts of stuff, and they're selling a little bit of a powder, and they're making money hand over fist. But any kind of powder, any kind of one pill, this and the other, will not make or break your physique. It all comes down to the food. It comes down to your mindset. It comes down to your training intensity and your training program. And so those are all obviously massive, massive portions of getting it done. Very well said, man. So, bro, again, welcome to the family. If there's any other questions or any other issues you have, you can hit me up in the live chat, send me an email and whatnot. But we'll have to do this again sometime and follow up with your progress, bro.
Yeah, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. And, I quite enjoyed this.
You got it, man. Oh, and also make sure if you can, next time you do your deadlifts, to get a video from the side and then post that up in the private Facebook group, and then we can look into that a little bit more. All right.
Yeah. Okay. That's not a problem. Thank you very much.
You got it, Luke. We'll talk soon, brother. Have a good one.
Cheers. Thank you.
Take
Goodbye.
care. You got it, bro.
Bye.
All right. Across the pond, Luke, thank you so much for your time, dude. And everyone that's still tuned in and plugged in, that's watching on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, and of course, all the podcast peeps on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for your attention and your time on a Wednesday. It's hump day. So if you are getting your stem pump on, if you're working some glutes today, go get it. Today I'm working on my arm humps. I'll be doing some arm pumple stilt skin, maybe some shoulders with bis and tris, a little bit of everything. I think that's on the menu because I crushed legs yesterday and I'm fucking jacked. My back, my glutes, everything just got rocked because I haven't done legs in a little bit over a week, but it felt good. It felt good to get a good pump on. It felt good to get back into the flow since coming back from Ohio. So kind of still getting into my routine, but I feel good. The moisture, it's hot, the sun's out, so everything's looking right and tight. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Thank you so much, fam, for joining me for episode 796 of the Daily Mother Swole, the most muscular Swolecast, Beardcast, Broadcast, Gamecast, Mancast, Pimpcast, and Slaycast in the realm, because when I flex, you flex. We all flex our biceps. Oh, oh, oh. Thank you so much for joining me again tomorrow, 797. Peace, McGee's fam. Deuce, Magoose. A Papa Swolio. Oh, 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 oh. Out.